It was a scorching Saturday afternoon, and I was out in the backyard, enjoying the peace and quiet of my rural farm. I had just finished a long week of work, and my only plans were to relax by the pool I'd built specifically for moments like these. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the distant chirping of birds filled the air. But something felt off. It was too quiet, almost eerily so. As I walked toward the pool, my gaze froze. There, in the middle of my yard, were nearly 99 people, all splashing around in my pool. The sight of strangers enjoying my personal space made my blood boil. I approached the group, trying to keep my cool. A man, who looked like he was in his 40s, noticed me walking toward them and smiled, clearly unaware of how angry I was. "Hey, looks like you're having fun," I called out, my voice tight with tension. "Yeah. We're all here for the HOA pool party," the man replied enthusiastically, handing me a flyer. "Karen, our president, sent these out to all the members. It's a great way to cool off." Confused and furious, I took the flyer. The text read, "HOA pool party, Saturday, 2 to 5 p.m. Property of the HOA." My eyes widened. This was my private property, and I had no idea who these people were. I scanned the crowd, finally spotting the culprit. Karen, the HOA president, was standing by the grill, flipping burgers, completely oblivious to the fact that she was trespassing. I walked over to her, trying to stay composed. "Karen, what the hell is going on here?" I demanded. She turned around, feigning innocence. "Oh, hi there. I'm just hosting a little get-together for the HOA members. You know, just a community event. You're not a part of the HOA, but it's no big deal, right?" "No big deal?" I growled, my fists clenching. "You're on my property, and you're throwing a party without my permission. Get everyone out of here, now." Karen's eyes narrowed, and she took a step forward. "You're mistaken. This is HOA property now. We've decided to host a party, and we don't need your approval." "Excuse me?" I could feel my heart racing. "This is my land, and you're trespassing. If you don't leave, I'll have you all arrested." Karen's face turned red, and she scoffed. "If you even think about calling the cops, I'll make sure you regret it. We have lawyers on standby. You're not going to win this." I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my fury. "We'll see about that," I muttered, turning on my heel and storming back to the house to make the call. This was far from over. I rushed inside the house, my blood still boiling from the audacity of Karen and her HOA. I grabbed my phone and dialed the local police department, trying to keep my voice steady. 911. "What's your emergency?" The dispatcher answered. "I need help," I said, my words clipped with anger. "There are about 99 people on my private property, in my pool. They're trespassing, and I want them off now." "Can you tell me who's in charge?" the dispatcher asked, and I could hear the urgency in their voice. "Karen. She's the president of the HOA around here," I replied. "She's the one who's invited them. I don't know what she's thinking, but she's acting like she owns the place." Within minutes, 2 officers arrived at the scene. I met them at the front door and led them out to the pool. The sight of nearly 100 people lounging and swimming in my backyard, acting like they owned the place, only fueled my frustration. The officers exchanged looks as they walked through the crowd, their presence commanding attention. Karen noticed them immediately and walked over with a forced smile, as if she was the one in control. "Officers, what's the issue here?" Karen said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm just hosting a little community event. You don't have to be so dramatic." The taller officer, Officer Rodriguez, turned to Karen. "Ma'am, we've been informed that this is private property, and you have no right to be here. We need everyone to leave." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. "What do you mean no right? This property belongs to the HOA now. We have every right to be here." You can't make us leave. I stepped forward, pointing to the private property sign near the entrance. This is my land. Karen, I said, trying to keep my voice steady but firm. You're trespassing. Now. I want everyone off my property. Karen folded her arms. Not backing down. I'll have your badge for this. You're making a huge mistake, she sneered, her voice growing more defensive. I'll sue the department for harassment. You'll regret this. Officer Rodriguez didn't flinch. Ma'am, you're trespassing. And you'll be removed if you don't leave voluntarily. If you don't, you'll be arrested. It's that simple. Karen's face turned red with rage. And she stepped closer, her voice trembling with anger. You can't do this. You don't understand who you're dealing with. I'll make sure you never work in this town again. But the officers were unshaken. Ma'am, you've been warned. You need to leave, or we'll have to arrest you. Karen glared at the officers. But the sight of the law backing me up quickly deflated her resolve. She muttered under her breath and stormed off, shouting threats as she gathered her group. Get out of here. This isn't over. You'll all regret this, she yelled, her words trailing off as she walked away. As the officers escorted the last of the guests out, I stood on my porch, watching the chaos dissipate. The police had done their job, and Karen had been forced to retreat. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. No. Karen wasn't the type to let things go so easily. With a deep breath, I turned to thank the officers. Thank you. Both of you, I said, the tension still lingering in the air. No problem, sir. Just keep an eye out. If she tries something else, don't hesitate to call us again, Officer Rodriguez said before they both got into their patrol car and drove off. As the sound of their engine faded into the distance, I knew that Karen wouldn't back down that easily. She'd be back, and when she did, I'd be ready. The days after the pool party incident were tense. Karen's threats echoed in my mind, and I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't over. I'd hoped she would just let it go. But deep down, I knew better. People like her don't back down easily, especially when their pride is on the line. I spent most of the week keeping a low profile. But one evening, I went out for a late dinner with some friends, hoping to take my mind off the mess with the HOA. The last thing I expected was for Karen to strike back. But by the time I returned home, I would realize just how far she was willing to go. As I pulled up the gravel driveway, I immediately noticed something was off. The air was thick with smoke. My heart raced as I sprinted toward the house. There, in the middle of the backyard, my pool was engulfed in flames. The fire was growing quickly, fueled by something highly flammable. And I knew right away it wasn't just an accident. No, I shouted, running toward the pool. But the flames were too intense. I could feel the heat from several feet away. The smell of burning plastic and chlorine heavy in the air. Panic surged through me. But I knew I had to think fast. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? The dispatcher answered. My pool's on fire. It's spreading fast toward my house and crops. Please send help. Now, I yelled, my voice shaking. Stay calm, sir. We're sending units right now. Stay a safe distance away from the fire. The dispatcher responded quickly. I backed away from the flames, my mind racing as I looked around for any sign of who could have done this. My security cameras weren't the best, but I had a couple installed for situations like this. I rushed inside to check the footage. I could hardly believe what I saw. The grainy footage showed Karen, in her usual bright red jacket, sneaking onto my property. She was carrying what looked like a large gasoline can. She poured the gasoline liberally around the pool area, laughing to herself, before lighting a match and throwing it into the pool. I felt my stomach churn as I watched her casually walk away, as if she had just won some petty victory. The fire spread rapidly, and within moments, my backyard was a raging inferno. I grabbed my phone again, this time calling the police. Yeah. I need to report a crime, I said. my voice tight with fury. "I have video footage of Karen from the HOA starting a fire on my property. She's the one who set it all up." "Understood. We're sending units your way," the officer replied. "Stay where you are. We'll handle it from here." Within minutes, the fire trucks arrived. The fire department worked tirelessly to put out the flames. It was a full-blown operation, with hoses spraying water onto the pool and surrounding areas. The heat was unbearable. But they fought the fire until it was finally under control. It was only then that I could breathe again. By the time the fire was out, I stood in my backyard, surveying the damage. The pool was ruined, burned beyond recognition. The surrounding grass and landscaping were scorched, and the fire had almost reached my crops. But thankfully, my house was still standing. "Everything's under control, sir," one of the firemen said as he walked toward me. "It was a close call, but we've got it out. Just be thankful the fire didn't spread further." I nodded, still in shock. "I know who did this. I have video proof." The fireman gave me a sympathetic look. "You should report that. This wasn't an accident. And she's lucky no one got hurt." As the fire trucks pulled away, I realized just how far Karen had gone to retaliate. This wasn't just a pool party gone wrong anymore, this was personal. She had crossed a line. And I was done being passive about it. I wasn't about to let her get away with this. The game had changed. And now I would make sure Karen paid for what she had done. The hours following the fire were a blur. My heart was still racing from the close call. But as the fire trucks left and the smoke began to clear, a cold, seething rage took over. I couldn't shake the image of Karen calmly walking away from the fire she'd set. Her face twisted in that smug, satisfied smile. She had gone too far. And now it was time to make her pay. I went inside to check my security footage. The camera by the back door had caught everything. The grainy footage wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. I replayed the footage again and again, watching as Karen, in her bright red jacket, appeared in the frame, sneaking onto my property. She walked toward the pool, carrying a large gasoline can with purpose. My stomach turned as she started pouring the gasoline around the pool's edge, laughing to herself. I could almost hear her gloating in the silence. The most damning part was when she lit the match. She threw it into the pool area, and the flames ignited immediately, starting a fire that quickly spread. Her actions were deliberate, calculated, and with a complete disregard for the safety of my home, my crops, and even her own life. I knew I couldn't let this go. I called the police right away, this time more determined than ever. "I've got the evidence," I said, voice cold with fury. "I've got video footage of Karen from the HOA setting fire to my pool. She's the one who did it." The officer on the other end sounded surprised but serious. "We'll be there in a few minutes. Stay where you are and keep that footage ready." It wasn't long before the police arrived. They took the footage and immediately went to work, gathering the necessary information. They knew the seriousness of the crime. Arson and destruction of property were no small matters. And with video evidence, Karen wouldn't be able to talk her way out of this. About an hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a pair of officers standing there, along with Karen, handcuffed. "Is this your idea of a joke, Karen?" I couldn't help but sneer as I watched her struggle against the cuffs, clearly angry but powerless. Karen glared at me. "This isn't over. This land belongs to the HOA, and I have every right to do what I did. You'll regret this. I promise." "Right. Because the video clearly shows you setting fire to my property," I replied, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You can keep saying it's HOA property, but we both know the truth." The officers stood firm, their eyes cold as they read her rights. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for arson and destruction of property. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." Karen's face flushed a deep shade of red as she was escorted to the police car. "You'll pay for this," she yelled at me. But I didn't flinch. This was over. There was no way she could escape the consequences now. The officers turned to me, offering a brief nod of reassurance. "You did the right thing, sir. This is a serious charge. And with this evidence, she won't get away with it." I watched as the car drove off. My emotions a mix of relief and anger. The fight was far from over. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand. Karen had made her move. But now it was my turn to make sure she faced the consequences for what she'd done. The days after Karen's arrest felt like a surreal dream. For once, I allowed myself a moment of peace, knowing that the law had taken its course. But Karen wasn't the only one responsible for the chaos she'd caused. The HOA, the organization that had given her the power to make such reckless decisions, needed to be held accountable too. I wasn't just going to sit back and let them get away with this. I contacted my lawyer and filed a lawsuit against the HOA for allowing Karen to trespass on my property and cause so much destruction. The legal process was slow, but it didn't matter to me. I had the footage. I had the evidence. And I had my resolve. I wasn't backing down until I had justice. The court date arrived, and the tension was palpable as the room filled with lawyers and witnesses. Karen was there too, sitting at the defendant's table, her arms crossed and a defiant look on her face. But she had nothing to say. The evidence against her was irrefutable. The video of her setting the fire played on the screen, and the room fell silent as the judge watched intently. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that the fire was an accident, that it wasn't intentional, but it was clear to everyone that this wasn't some mishap. She had poured gasoline around the pool and deliberately set it ablaze. There was no denying it. "Your Honor, I would like to present the rest of the evidence," I said, my voice steady but filled with determination. "The HOA is complicit in allowing Karen to use their power to harm me and my property. They were aware of her actions, and they did nothing to stop her." The judge nodded, glancing at the lawyer representing the HOA, who looked visibly uncomfortable. "Do you have anything to say in defense of your client's actions?" the judge asked. The HOA lawyer stammered, trying to find an answer. But it was too late. The facts spoke for themselves. The judge turned to Karen, who now looked anything but confident. "I find the defendant guilty of arson and destruction of property," the judge announced. "And as for the HOA, this court finds that the organization abused its power and contributed to the damage. I hereby rule that the HOA be shut down, effective immediately." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. This battle, which had started with a group of strangers invading my backyard, was finally over. The judge's words echoed in my mind as the room filled with murmurs. The judge continued, turning her attention to Karen. "As for you, Karen, you have been found guilty, and I sentence you to prison for your crimes. You may not have thought your actions through, but the consequences of your choices are now very clear." Karen's face turned pale as the officers moved toward her. She tried to speak, but her words caught in her throat. "No, you can't do this," she muttered. But it was too late. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had fought back, and I had won. The HOA was gone. Karen was going to prison, and I could finally get back to my peaceful life. The years of frustration, the constant battles, the threats, it was all over. The neighborhood would be better off without her, and I would never have to worry about HOA nonsense again. As I walked out of the courtroom, I couldn't help but smile. Justice had been served, and the nightmare that had plagued me for so long was finally behind me. The HOA was finished. Karen was behind bars, and I was free. And that's a wrap on this wild ride with Karen and the HOA. What do you think? Should she have been held accountable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more crazy HOA drama. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.